I think that we just need to focus on as a team, and I think as what we push is like, if we're just going to try and make it as simple as possible, we have good intentions. We want to make sure that at the end of the day, the Bitcoin ecosystem is continuing to grow into a larger pie. We're supporting builders as best we can. That's all we can do. That's sort of, I think, the best that we can do as a company, as just people in the ecosystem. And unfortunately, like the rest of the stuff, there will be rugs on Bitcoin if there hasn't already, right? There will be BRC20 ICOs this summer and DeFi and all of this sort of stuff that is just, it's really unfortunate and gives, of course, this space in general a bad stain. That's something I think that is obviously on our minds. We try not to focus on it as much as possible, but to make sure that we're staying true to our mission and like just pushing that forward, because I think that's just what we can do best.
Episode is finally here. I think this might actually be BitGod's first podcast. In a world of BRC20s and Ordinals where everything is on demand, Twitter Spaces, BitGod actually just got off of Twitter Spaces with 600 people to go on this show so that we get to talk directly and intimately about everything that's been going on. Sometimes the details get left in the redactedness, I should say. So,
absolutely.
Dude, thanks for coming on, man.
No, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to this podcast.
Dude, I'll get just kind of straight to the details. First is that I've never seen a Twitter account scale as fast as you did. I remember when you'd come on our Friday show, the Emblem Show with Adam, you were, I think, under 1,000 at that time. But you were definitely making it very active, and between a lot of the ordinal people in the ordinal space, we were very aware that you were probably going to blow up. I didn't know that fast, but also that it felt like you were very experienced. And we actually had speculated for a little while that your account was run by multiple people. It was like somebody's taking the voice, right? Somebody's taking the DMs. It just felt like you had been in this position before. And after you released your token, the BRC20 OXBT, right? Ordinals plus XBT. A lot of people didn't know what actually XBT was. And if you are familiar, it goes way back to 2014. And we were DMing about just being Arthur Hayes Simps of BitMEX, of him just being an absolute G. That means you've kind of probably been in the space for quite some time. You said you had some appreciation. So let's just go back to that point. You reveal whatever type of information you want. But how long have you been in this space? And were you a DGen back in 2014, like some of those?
Yeah, so I've been in this space since really 2015. I wasn't around when, I think Arthur Hayes, I guess, originally started. But, post sort of 2015 and getting into this space, I definitely, degened pretty hard, right? I think that my first foray was into crypto was, of course, with Bitcoin, where I think many people start. But then sort of quickly from there, sort of spread out my bets into just a number of different shitcoins, right? Just random stuff. I don't even remember what they're called today, but it was on like Bittrex, Coinbase, Bittrex, those sort of exchanges back then. Just putting in money into sort of like random things. And ultimately from there, right, like during 2015, 2016 and into 2017, like they did ultimately, okay, right? And then 2017 happened, and that was pretty massive. I think December of 2017, or maybe January of 2020. I think it's December, right? Almost the end of 2017 was when we hit like 20K, and then it would drop. I think to like 10K, and then 5K, and then range there for a while. And so all the stuff I'd owned basically went to zero, and so could just continue off from there. Eventually would of course go to college. And then just continue on in sort of the space. I've basically done, though, in the crypto space, really everything but the tech side, right? I'm not a developer. I'm not a programmer. That's just not what I sort of do. I fundamentally understand the tech, can explain it probably, to someone else, like I'm a 5-year-old or they're a 5-year-old, but, ultimately I'm just not a tech guy. And so, I've done the marketing, BD, socials, all that sort of stuff, previous to this.
I think we have quite a similar story. I got into crypto right after college. I got into it in 2016, right? Traded all the shit coins, ICO mania, got completely rugged, lost everything I had in 2018, kind of started all over. I'm not also not a developer, understand culture, kind of an entrepreneurial kind of style thing. And over the last 7 months since I've worked at Emblem, I've learned a lot about how the back end works, and it feels like two completely different worlds, I have to say. You have this Twitterverse where everyone is just like insistently fighting each other for some reason, very tribal. And then you get to the back end and you realize that everyone's kind of just like working together, kind of just like helping each other, providing a lot of information, and just trying to really grow that pie overall. Do you feel that type of sense so far of building out Redacted over the last, we'll say, month or so, especially in a very like emerging space that is Ordinals?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think that it's very different. I think a lot of times in, of course, on the DM side, on the Discord side, which I've tried to stay mostly away from actually on the Discord side and just keep that to DMs, because I think that like, all of this stuff has gotten so saturated, right? Over these past like 2 or 3 years, it's just, you have people on Twitter that are just like, content about content, and it's like, there's not a lot of primary sources of content anymore, at least like on the East side and Soul side. And so like, what do you see on your feed, right? On like the East side, it was like, just people screenshotting other tweets, like makes you think, what I mean? It going viral and you're just like, this isn't NFT. This isn't, I don't know. So it got very, very saturated. And I think that like all that saturation, I've tried to sort of take over here into Bitcoin and just really start over, right? Like, and you see that, and I think in our approach to everything is like, we're not just like, all right, here's a Discord, go join, go be a part of it. It needs to be different, right? It needs to be sort of like, there needs to be a reason behind actually doing it. And for people to join, for people to mint, everything, it needs to have a reason and it needs to be different. And of course, paying a ton of attention to detail and making that as simple as possible for the end user. So I think I completely agree with you. Yeah.
Were you, and a little bit more background before I dive back in, were you a participant the entire time in the crypto space 2015? Did you dabble in DeFi summer or the NFT summer that preceded afterwards?
So I guess, trying to trade, although I don't know how great of a trader I really am, since 2015, right? But ultimately didn't start really working in crypto until 2020, right? Which was also the year that I graduated college. So it's been sort of 8 full years, I guess, in crypto. Generally investing, generally trying to trade, being wrecked, etc. But really working since 2020.
Awesome. And do you have any prior experience with working with any crypto teams, or is this the first project that you decided to take on?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked previously for a DEX, centralized exchange, venture firm, a number of sort of different, I think, types of I guess, firms or companies in the crypto space.
Awesome. Like I said, when you'd first come up the spaces, it sounded like you were very experienced, or you at least knew what you were doing, and it wasn't as much of a LARP and interest as it was that you had kind of this vision. So I pulled up your Twitter account. You created it March 2023, and you're currently at 133,400 followers. Like these are the type of numbers you put up, or people were putting up in like the 2021 bull run, right, where people like Farouk would go from 0 to 300,000 in like a year. Just like absolutely like monster numbers. A big component of this was this redacted model of your project, and we'll dive into some of the details later. But you took like a marketing strategy approach first, which really resembled Frank's Utes kind of rollout of the Ute list, where you were kind of handing out these lists. But you also did it in a method to where you had to mint out all of the tokens and then figure out this whitelist meta.
Yeah.
Was that the original vision of this, or did you have to change your marketing strategy based off of the engagement that you were receiving of this redacted project?
I think definitely a lot of it, and I think this is great. Why we get to do a podcast like this, because I think that the real questions get to be asked, and you get to sort of see some alpha behind the scenes. A lot of it, I think, was sort of seeing what people did and didn't like, right? And so we originally, I think, started out at a certain place, but had to really morph that into something, I think, that's entirely different, right? And I think that we started out thinking that this was just going to be, something we could sort of have fun with. But I think that it's turned into something totally different and much more serious. And I think that you go back almost exactly 3 weeks ago to around like March 9th, when I started to really tease this, right? And I think that's when I started to of course, gain traction on my main account. And I think soon after, ultimately launched this account. The original plan was to really do a live Unisat mint, right? That was the original plan, because at that time, again, exactly 3 weeks ago, there was no other options, right? There was potentially, some options coming up, but they weren't known to us. And so exactly 3 weeks ago, probably around this time, maybe a couple hours before this, 3 weeks ago, Frank messages me while I'm on a space, I think with you and Leo, and I think some other Naveen and others. And, he's like, how do we get, sort of BRC20s to the Bitcoin DeGods? And at that point, I was like, well, shit, I honestly don't know. Because again, we're doing the Unisat Live Mint. I sort of came up with a potential plan, which was like, we were just going to be on a phone call with one of his associates and try and mint this out as much as possible for them to eventually airdrop it to the DeGods. And, I continue to think about that more and more, just how much of a challenge that would really be. And so we were sort of left. And also, I think we were given a little time, because I did not want to mint this or have it be minted while, of course, the network fees were around like 300 to 400 sats per VBIT. Again, it didn't make any sense for people to be paying $200 to $300 just to potentially get ran as well. And so I was sort of taking my time with that, thinking about different options. We would eventually see that company OrdBot, right, or Ordinals bot. They came out with some sort of solution to this. But I think 1 or 2 days later, which is like Thursday, about 2.5 weeks ago, they would get DDoSed and spammed, and basically, that was for Zbit, I'm pretty sure, from Bitcoin machines. And so from there, we chatted with them more and more, because we were going to go live, I think, on Friday. The model was going to be much different, right? Just like we did with Luminex last week. But ultimately, they were just like, dude, like we don't even know if we're going to be able to ever do this again. Like, our servers are so fried, and like we don't know how to stop it. And so there was a lot of problems. And we were like, well, shit, we're back to the drawing board. Maybe I guess we got to do the Unisat. And then we were reached out to by a couple companies. One was OrdKit, and another was Luminex, of course. Decided to chat with both of them, and really felt that Luminex was the most competent team. And then they started sort of to build it from there. And actually, Yan from Xverse was a key piece in putting those pieces together. He called me, I think, on Friday of that week, maybe May 14th or something. And he's like, hey, pretty crazy idea. I know that you guys are maybe going to do Ordinals bot. I got this team. They might be sort of great. And at that time as well, I was like, listen, I feel like the hype might die. Like, we need to probably go ASAP with this. And they were looking at maybe another 4 or 5 days of actually building. And so I was like, all right, we'll chat, but I don't know. Right. And so just continued to chat. And then finally, Ordinals bot was like, all right, we're not going to do anything. We were just left with those 2 options, and really just felt Luminex was the right option for that. So it's definitely morphed into something that I think has been completely organic and really totally unexpected. And I think a lot of ways.
It's been quite an adventure, and we had joked actually in DMs of the allow list when you just started tweeting about it, kind of jokingly, and then it just actually had to become an allow list because of the amount of demand. And it's as this has grown, Ordinals over the last 2 months, it hit like a peak and then died off, and then really ramped up with the BRC20. Yep. And so what I'm seeing here and sitting at on the project account, it's Redacted BTC NFT. It says it's powered by BRC20 OXBT. It looks like this account was actually created before your personal account from March 2023. So it sounds like you had the project in mind for quite some time. No, is that true, or is this was it flip?
So basically that account is, for some reason, I wasn't able to create another account on Twitter. It was, Twitter's been sort of, I guess, buggy and laggy. And so there's not more lore to that. It's really just like, I asked a friend if they could create one, and they already had one, and sort of let me sign in, and of course just changed the password and changed the email and stuff, and just switched it over. They had like no followers, they had no comments or anything. It was just like their alt or something. So there's no like lore or anything behind. We were thinking about this back, and it was just literally like I couldn't create another account for some reason, and I needed one for this page. This is like, again, almost probably exactly 3 weeks ago, and that of course sort of changed and switched it over from there.
And at the top, it's pinned. The mint was probably about a week ago or so for the OXBT.
Yeah, about 5 days ago.
Has it really only been that long? It's Jesus.
Yeah.
Or short.
On Thursday, it'll be 7 days.
Jesus, this place moves so freaking fast. But you created this account March 2023. The BRC20 standard came out March 10th, 2023. And this is where I think Ordinals really began to blow up. Was the original vision of the project were you inspired by the BRC20 to build a project, or did you have something else in mind, maybe more on the NFT side, that was the original vision and you knew that OXBT was probably the right move?
So I think, honestly, when I originally started this account, as well as I think just got into the Ordinals ecosystem, I don't think there was ever an intention of honestly even building anything, right? I think my sort of goal was to have fun, to shit post, to collect, right? That was my sort of original goal of ultimately of being in the Ordinals ecosystem. And I think that you saw that in some of the different conversations, was just trying to be a part of the conversation, again, have fun, see what other people are minting. And I think that what happened, of course, was like you said, I think a little bit earlier, about 5 weeks ago, right? It had a little lull, right? On the Ordinal side, there was a point, at least like with JPEGs, where people were like, I don't know, like there wasn't a lot of new mints happening. Floor prices were tanking. People, I think, honestly, probably thought it was over. But I think during that time, right, myself and I think many others started to mint as many BRC20s as we possibly could. This is maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago, right? And I think during that time, it was just interesting because it was something that was brand new. And I think that as I started to mint this stuff, as I started to see, I think more and more traction, I started to build a thesis around, hey, like maybe there is something I can really build here that incorporates the BRC20 side of things. And ultimately, that's, I think, where maybe 6 weeks ago, I started to really build any sort of vision or thesis around building anything. And I think that part of the reason I think really did OXBT was we just feel as though there's potential here for almost like a reversal, right? Whereas you see on many different chains, the sort of meta has been, launch an NFT project, and then sort of eventually, if you have enough traction and people want it, launch some sort of Ponzi token or something that is involved in somehow that ecosystem. But we sort of saw the reverse, right? We felt as though you could get more people involved, right, on the fungible token level at the beginning, and then somehow sort of build an experience around that for ultimately what comes next, which we believe is some sort of collection, right? I think that's where we're trying to leave as much ambiguity around, but that's ultimately what we believe is next. And so that's, I think, the thesis there, and why all of this started and where it started, I guess, and where we're at today.
And BRC20s has really taken not just the Ordinal space by storm, but crypto Twitter in general. You see it all over the place. You see the traditional Bitcoin owners are very upset by it. You see a lot of the ETH people calling it dumb and stupid, right? This is just generally what happens when paradigm shifts change with different blockchains. And specifically, this is Bitcoin. This is the biggest de facto, most decentralized chain in existence. Yep. From a technical side, I'm sure some would be wondering, and I actually am as well, like, what are your thoughts on BRC20? Are you a big fan of the simplicity? Did you just pursue it because that's where the attention is, and you started seeing Binance and OKX and some of the Asian influenced centralized exchange jumping on board with Unisat? Do you think there needs to be any improvements? Just let us dive into your mind a little bit of what you think about the mechanics behind it.
So I think that I've said this on really multiple spaces before, that the tech doesn't really matter, right? And so ultimately what matters is, distribution, network effects, sort of buy-in, the type of projects building on a certain standard. And so I think what generally interested me was so far at that time, BRC20 had the most buy-in, and it had the most mints, most assets owned. The infrastructure was there, right? Unisat had, of course, built the infrastructure to easily mint this stuff. It was ultimately going, I think, in the direction that I thought was too far or sort of too large of a network effect for anything else to really take over or meaningfully sort of have any traction as well. And so that's, I think what initially, got me into BRC20s. I think maybe just a little bit before that, going into my thought process as well, is I think that I understood personally why JPEGs and sort of more NFT-like assets, right, on Bitcoin, I felt would be very valuable. But I think as I started to think about, in general, potential of fungible tokens on Bitcoin, I felt also, right, that those would have a sizable position in the overall fungible token market as well as on Bitcoin. So that was my general thesis. And then from there, it's like, again, like who has the most network effects, or which, sort of standard has the most network effects? How am I involved with that? Am I just sort of purchasing or minting these? Am I sort of furthering them? I don't know, right? But ultimately, I do believe there needs to be improvements, right? And I've chatted a little bit with Domo, and I got to meet him in Bitcoin Miami as well. Chatted a little bit in the DMs. Got to be on a couple spaces. I think that he's incredibly smart, and I don't think that he ultimately, this is what we talked about a little bit. Is just like people are really hung up on this, like the tech needs to be better. The tech needs to be better, right? What makes not Unisat, but BRC20 so different is because they are almost counterintuitive, right? It's not an easy sort of standard to get in line with. You got to mint transfer inscription. It's just everything is done sort of backwards. And I think lastly, to sort of touch on this point, what interests me maybe the most about, I think, BRC20s is really two things, right? And I put this in a tweet, and I'm reading it now as I just went back, and it basically says this: it's BRC20s equal near zero risk plus scarcity, right? And what I mean by that is really this: in one, right, the cost should be as close to zero as possible when you're minting this stuff, right, which is what we sort of aim to do with our mint, as well as there's no smart contract risk, right? Then second, right, to the scarcity piece, it's a limited supply, fair launch, right? Once a token is 100% minted, there's no new tokens that it can ever be created. As well as second is you're limited to 4 characters only, right? OXBT can never be deployed by anyone else again. And those sort of 4 things are what I think ultimately intrigues me by the standard of BRC20, and I think ultimately why we decided to build on top of it.
I listened to a podcast recently with CZ that was on, I believe it was the Pankless podcast, and he was discussing how at Binance they were currently exploring what's the next big thing. And I think he meant like protocol or technology, because he used the reference of DeFi in 2020, and then he used the NFTs in 2021. And now we've seen Binance basically say they're building an NFT marketplace. They've all but confirmed it. And OKX has already jumped on board, Huobi and a few others. Have you or your team come in contact with any of these centralized exchanges? And if so, like what are they asking for from you guys? Is it just generally something of like information and exploring, or do they have their own ideas as well?
Yeah, so we have not really chatted with the Binance team. I think potentially there's someone on our team that has some sort of relationship there, but as far as I've heard, Binance is still 1 to 2 months away from anything on the BRC20 side. I believe I forget though, like they've already listed, I think, Ordinals, or maybe that's coming more soon. So I've heard a couple things on that side. Then I think second is yes, I mean, we've chatted really a lot with a number of different centralized exchanges pre and post mint of OXBT. I think that sort of pre-mint, the focus was more so on getting product feedback on their ordinal side of things, right? They, at least OKX, I'll give them sort of props. They've been very, I think, clear with us is they want feedback. They want to sort of help the ordinals ecosystem. And I think that it's shown in their actions, right? All the others, right, I think are just listing to list. And potentially Binance is different, right? I've heard they have actually reached out to other artists in the ordinals ecosystem. But at least OKX, I'll give them very big props because they've done, I think, really an incredible job communicating with us, showing support, and want to sort of figure out how to work together, I think, long term. I think that maybe there's something in the future that we do together. Nothing is sort of set in stone, and I think in any sort of contract yet, but we would definitely like to work with them. And I think that that other sort of companies, right? We've chatted with other sort of exchanges. They're definitely keeping an eye on this. I think there is sort of a technical hurdle here, right? And I think that many exchanges understand that. And I think that anytime there's a technical hurdle, they have to try and figure out, how to ultimately get over that technical hurdle, and does it make sense in terms of volume, cost to them, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that for the most part, it's not exactly a probably profit benefiting activity yet, right? If you're only listing Ordi, it's not necessarily probably going to be that profitable, but I expect by the end of summer that could change. But yes, we have ultimately chatted with many of these exchanges.
That's kind of what I assumed as well. Unisat's kind of been like the leader in that perspective. They built really the first BRC20 indexer, which has then been adopted by a handful of decentralized exchanges. It's interesting because we are on the most decentralized protocol, but whereas it's this idea of kind of like on-chain assets with off-chain governance. Yep. Where over time, the goal or the hope at least is that it becomes more decentralized, whether it's kind of like spinning up more indexers so that people are operating off the same system. They build a decentralized one or some product to come into the future. Does this concern you, or does the Redacted team take this into account as you begin to build out additional products of something like an art or NFT companion alongside the OXBT that you mentioned earlier?
I think so. I think obviously it's always a little worrying where you want to be, really, really creative, but are worried that the tech is just a little bit, are we just a little bit too early is obviously a bit of a worry. I think though that what's been shown is the past 2 to 3 weeks, right, with efforts from Luminex, and seeing sort of products like even like Liquidium, right, that are doing sort of Ordinals NFTFi, with other products like Deep Lake and Bitflow, that all of this stuff can be built here on Bitcoin. It's probably just going to take a little time, and it's going to take a little money, and that's totally fine with me. And I think that you have competent teams like Luminex. You have, I think, people that are really understanding of the Bitcoin tech, but then you also have people that I think are just going to try and come over and build something ASAP without a lot of understanding, without a lot of buy-in from the community. But ultimately, that competition, I think, will breed some of the best, types of tech we see on Bitcoin over these next couple of years. So I think it's definitely a little bit worrying, right? Especially as we're like, all right, here's our sort of goal to launch this. Will there be enough tech, or can we work with Luminex again to figure out how OXBT is worked into all of this, and the burning mechs and that, all this sort of infra is definitely not in place. And so it's exciting, but also, again, another stressful piece that you wish wasn't there. But that's what makes, I think building on Bitcoin at this stage so fun, right? Is no one else is doing this. So let's have a little fun with it, and let's show maybe some people how things should be done.
Yeah, precisely. Diving a little bit into the strategies you mentioned before, I've pulled up here Unisat, the holder counts. There's 2 large ones, right? There's one that's holding 31 million roughly tokens for about 16%. The second one is 2.75 million, which is 1.38%, which you've publicly noted that you've sent to Satoshi's wallet, which effectively means it's burned. Because if Satoshi's wallet ever wakes up, I think we have much larger issues than him dumping OXBT like Vitalik dumped SHIB on the rest of the community. And then everything else seems quite distributed. Yep. The third is 0.47%, and then it goes all the way down. And the third wallet has 942,000 tokens. So none of them even has 1 million. Of course, some of these could be held by multiple people based off mints and acquisition strategies. The number one, right, we're assuming is the team wallet. It hasn't been discussed publicly yet. So as we sit here, just curious on what is the strategy? Well, first, is this the team treasury wallet? And if so, what is the strategy for this? Because at a 20% or 20 cent XBT is about $5 to $6 million sitting there.
Right. Yeah. So the sort of team wallet is definitely that one. What are our thoughts, right? I think our thoughts are, we initially had a, thought process behind all of the tokenomics. But I think that what we're realizing is it's great to have those thoughts, but now at the stage that we're at, the sort of amount of eyeballs that are now on us, it's no longer sort of like, all right, here's the tokenomics, let's put it out. No, we need to explain ourselves. We need to also make sure that it's in full sort of legal purview as well. So we've been having those active conversations as well. So a lot of this stuff I think is like, you go 2 or 3 weeks ago and it's like, all right, like this is the general idea. This sounds great. But now we're at this sort of level, and that's no longer the case, right? Everything I think we're sort of having to do is taking a little bit longer to sort of flesh out, make decisions on, as it should, right? I think that we're now in a different position than we really were 3 to 4 weeks ago, and they need explanations. They need sort of proper thought out sort of thoughts, and I think that that's the best way to really go. And so I think that that's the way we're currently looking at it. Is we have a general idea. We're really focused on getting the sort of legal side of things in place, as well as consulting with our couple advisors on what do we ultimately want to do to maximize the sort of onboard, educate, and entertain on the Bitcoin side, and then really go from there and release that.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have, right? I have learned since working at Emblem that the legal constraints, especially being American based, you have to be very particular in the way that you go about it, right? You have to set up legal entities, which then if you're setting up legal entities, takes time comparative to the speed that everyone works at in crypto, which puts you behind. And then you have, the when crowd who just gets mad that you're not pumping it or whatever the case is. I have pulled open the Treasury wallet, and just to kind of put this FUD to bed or maybe questions, there's maybe 10 other tokens that are in here. Are any of these other ones a part or a plan of the OXB team, or is this a manipulative strategy people are using to try to mint tokens to the wallet to appear that this is part of the project?
Yeah, it's unfortunately a manipulative strategy. I think that there's maybe like one in there that was like a test token, but with Luminex, but really other than that, it's all manipulative stuff, unfortunately. That OXBI I think is just trying to throw people off, and that's what's I think really unfortunate here.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's a common tactic that you see with in the ETH space.
Yeah.
Take us a little bit through Luminex, who I'm pulling up here on screen, and creating this launch pad. Was this something that you guys had to build out together? How long were you in talks with them to build this launch pad out? And then from beginning to end, are you how do I say this? Are you not excited, but are you was it a good experience overall? I would say from the time that you built it, because I'm sure it was probably quite stressful, to how it ended.
Yeah, I think 110%. Are we satisfied? Are we happy? Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think like I was speaking to at the beginning before recording, is like the mint couldn't have gone any better. I really think, right? It could have gone a lot worse. It just couldn't have gotten, I think, really much better. And so they started to really build this. As far as I know, when Yan connected us, I think was I think the 14th. I'd have to look at the calendar. I can just look at the calendar here, and so we can look at a timeline. This is May, so I guess I'm pretty sure they started to build this May 12th. So what is that? I guess
about
18 days ago.
Yeah, about 2.5 weeks.
But of course, we minted 5 days ago, right? So they started to build that then, and what I think we were planning on honestly going live the next week, which was Bitcoin Miami, or during Bitcoin Miami, and so that's what they planned for. That's what they weren't really sleeping over, but ultimately decided that after really actually talking to Udi in Bitcoin, or just in Miami, he was like, why not just sort of push it out a little bit, not stress so much this week, at Bitcoin Miami, and try and get more people involved. And I think it was one of the best pieces of advice. And we did exactly that. We sort of, continued to push it out, continued to sort of push on more whitelists. And then, really from there, I think continued to hone in on the experience that ultimately LumenX built, right, which was the final product live on Thursday. So I think a week and a half or so of them building this. I think if we would have gone live when we did it, I don't know if it would have been as good, because I think that all of us were incredibly busy, right? I was traveling, then I was of course at Bitcoin Miami. The rest of the team was also actually coming to Bitcoin Miami as well. I got to meet a bunch of other people, so it was very difficult and very stressful. But ultimately a week and a half working very closely with them on the UI side, on little fixes here and there. One thing we weren't even going to go live with was actually the invoice option. It was going to be solely Xverse, but made it known that we can't, as much as we love Xverse, we can't silo it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We cannot have that option, and so wanted to create the experience incredibly similar to Unisat, right? Where you would just either connect your Unisat wallet, or you had the option to just pay in simply by invoice, and both of those sort of options went very well.
It really did. If LumenX team's watching this, you guys really did crush it. Hit me up, come on the show, so we can talk about
Definitely.
it. Very impressed by it.
Yeah. And that wasn't that was their first BRC20 launchpad mint, right? But that was not their first Ordinals mint, right? They had done, I believe, the Doge Punks. They had done a couple different things on their launchpad, and so very experienced sort of Bitcoin people.
Yeah, they did a really good job. Regarding the Redacted team, and as I open it back again up here on Twitter, there was a funny spaces, and we were talking about this a few days ago. A funny spaces where there was speculation that this was a DGods project, and that Frank was kind of pulling the strings. He came out and kind of denounced it and said he reached out, but we're not directly involved. Maybe down in the future there could be some sort of partnership or anything. Give us some insight about who is working on this? How big is the team? Are you guys looking for additional help? I can only imagine that you might need some assistance, as you're literally up. You're tweeting when I get up. You're tweeting when I go to bed. You're on shows. You were just on a Spaces literally 2 minutes before you hopped onto this podcast. What is going on behind the scenes with this team?
Yeah. So now we've sort of built a pretty small team that I think all pulls their weight really well. But basically, the current structure is we sort of have myself, Lynn on the creative side, and we have really Brad, who is really an operating advisor, right? So he's been helpful in just general advice. This looks good. This doesn't look good on the day-to-day side of things. But that's ultimately the sort of team right now. And I think as we do more and more stuff this week, I think we're definitely going to have to scale it a little bit. But I think we need to try and stay as really lean as possible, sort of as things go forward. And that means, of course, just continued sort of, I think, sacrifice and sort of push on my side in helping in just a number of different areas, right? It's been, the past couple of days on the legal side, on the exchange side, on the market making side, it's myself and the rest of the team, but also making sure that Lynn is set up on the creative side and not have to worry as much as we maybe do. So yeah, that's the sort of current team, and expect to probably scale that up pretty quickly.
And when you do choose to scale, what is that procedure like? I can only assume your DMs are literally probably flooded with messages. Is this going to be something that you guys are going to post? Is there a plan of attack to scale something this massive?
So I honestly think that's worked really, really well so far for us, right? Is obviously people that we know really well. So I've known Lynn now, and you may know him as well, right? Like the creator of Or Pepe's, right? So I've known him, and honestly, that was my first ever profile picture, right? That was his little Trump Or Pepe. That was one of the things I found that popped, right? And it was just a funny sort of profile picture to go with I guess what I was going for. And so what I've done is I guess on the team side is people that I've trusted, right? Like people that I've known for a little bit of time, not just hey, you seem qualified, let's go. I think also too, the qualifications here are I think for anything we do, it would be nice if they have a little bit of Ordinals experience, right? And not just coming straight over from Sol or ETH, having a little bit of that extra knowledge, I think will give our team some edge in any respect. And so I think that if that's the case, there isn't really that many people, right, on the ordinal side that are like really qualified, right? So, or I shouldn't say actually qualified. I should say there isn't that many people on the ordinal side that I probably don't know, right? And so that's where I think it's going to be. It's going to be like, hey, like I've noticed what you've done before. Would you be interested in joining? And you know, I think many people would be inclined to. So I think that's what it's going to be. Of course, we'll take recommendations from, you know, I think that the two sort of people on the team, if they sort of know people, but I think it's best if they have a little bit of Ordinals experience.
Yeah, I think you said it quite perfectly. And now, as we kind of move to the present day where we are now, first, the marketing strategy that you did is so simplistically brilliant. It's insane. You tweeted this literally yesterday. The ordinals, and it's just that orange background where users are just putting their PFP in front of it just to, you know, whether it's to drive engagement or to show kind of their support or tribalism for the community. Was that the intention of the orange background? And is there, what is the meaning behind Redacted itself?
Yeah. So I think a lot of this has sort of, you know, been what the market is telling us, right? I'm really a strong believer in just like capitalism, you know, free market economics, and like listening to that, right? The sort of the sort of hand of the market. I think the hand is ultimately telling us two things, right? One is people really like that orange, and two is people really like, I think, the redacted block, right? That sort of blanked out block. And so I think that you know, since seeing that, I'm like, listen, like all the other stuff that we maybe had planned is cool, but I think that it's clear that people want us to really lean into this, right? And so, you know, starting to retweet a bunch of people that are on or that are doing this, you know, starting to sort of tease different things around these sort of colors, these sort of pieces, is I think what we need to really focus on. And I think has sort of the ability here is maybe it's really that like redacted is ultimately the Yuga, and you know what comes next is of course. You know, what we've seen from some of the different stuff we've seen from Yuga, and of course a large part of that really is that orange background, right? Is that redacted block. That's the way we're currently looking at it. I would say that it wasn't like, you know, oh, we're definitely going to push this as the marketing strategy. I think that you know, I've seen a little momentum. I think we need to pick up on that momentum and then obviously push it as much as possible. And I think it's worked well, right? Because it goes to not only our ethos, right, I guess, which is arguably like now our thing, right, which is that redacted orange, but it also goes to the Bitcoin ethos, right? So it's not like sort of taking away from, I think, the broader movement. It's just feeding it, right? So I think that that's why it's worked technically so well, is it's not sort of inauthentic. It stays true to the Bitcoin ethos, stays true to our ethos, which is onboarding and educating and really entertaining. And, you know, it also happens to be a great, you know, sort of poppy marketing strat. So it lines up really, really well.
Yeah, you've absolutely crushed it with it. And it makes it easy to show that you're in support of Ordinals, or that you kind of want to get onto the wave itself. Ordinals in general feels like every day you wake up, there's something new. You even have in this tweet, GN to all the Ordinal, BRC, SRC, SBRC, ORC20, right? I saw today there was like ERC 21 or 721E, ERC 1150 or BRC 1155, right? It just goes on and on and on and on. How does somebody with this type of project, how do you stay with like your finger on the pulse, building a product when there is this type of like rapid innovation?
I think it's sort of having a general thesis, right? Because I think there always is, of course, a ton of different things sort of moving around, but I think that you need to have a general thesis on maybe an overarching theme, and then trying to stay true to that as much as possible is, I think really key. And I think that we've obviously made a couple different shifts, we've made a couple different changes, but I think again, like having maybe an end goal, and then, you know, being flexible and ultimately how you get there, I think is the best way to do that in crypto. But also, I think second, and this goes against what I basically just said, right, is building theses, right? But also being willing to sort of understand that thesis might be wrong, and being able to quickly sort of change that and maybe either remove yourself from that or sort of hopping onto what you believe is actually the real thesis that should have been the sort of thesis from the beginning. But I don't know. Those are sort of the two things I think you can do best, I guess, as a trader, as a collector. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's just honestly strong entrepreneurial principles. Being able to have the self-awareness that maybe you're climbing up the wrong mountain and that you need to go back. Yeah. And generally when you do that, right, you need to grab some assistance and kind of not do it alone. One of the recent trends that has happened recently, which I was talking about yesterday, I don't know if you've seen this, the new names, the namespaces, where it's .sats, .btc, .xbt, so on and so forth. One of my favorites that's popped up recently was called .xbt, and it felt like at first when I saw this, I was like, oh, dude, this has got BitGod's name all over it, right? OXBT, .xbt. You can essentially even do like .oxbt, right, for kind of like community names. What's your thought about some of these like name spaces? Do you think there's something here for this that could be tied into the redacted ecosystem, or do you like you said, you just got to be focused for now, and maybe if this captures more attention, then maybe you'll kind of focus on things like this?
This is something that we've definitely thought about. I think the problem is we see in something like this that ultimately there's only a few, I think, that are really going to win, right? I think that .btc makes sense, although I know there's like two different sort of domain that you can potentially purchase from. .sats to me makes a lot of sense as well. I think a lot of potential value will accrue there. And then, sort of, I think lastly is what is there maybe one more that might take the cake as well, right? Because ultimately, I don't think it's going to be everyone has a totally different one, right? There's going to be one that catches the most traction on the names, and that a lot of people are going to try and put that as a part of their Twitter name, as a part of their identity. And so that's my sort of thoughts there is the value really accrues in just a couple. I don't know which one it is, right? I think .sats has been pretty popular previous to this announcement. .pepe is of course really, really, really interesting because of the ties to ETH there as well, and that sort of token. But I don't know. I'm honestly not sure. We've thought about it a little bit. I think it's just like how does it tie into the broader sort of longer term vision or strategy, And I think we struggle to really wrap our heads around how exactly that's the case over something like an NFT. If that sort of names is not a sort of top one or two type names, then it almost feels just like another cash grab somehow, and like that's not something that we want to try and do.
Makes complete sense. Well, yesterday I said I had a present for you, and I somehow managed, I got early in and I inscribed redacted.xbt. So if you ever decide
that's sick.
That it is yours, right? Until I DM you, I'm like, yeah, it's a Bitcoin actually. But it's yours for free. So I'll send it to you. Just give me your whichever Taproot address and I'll send that to you. Yeah. And you could do redacted.xbt if you'd like. I figured that was a perfect fitting for you. I was going in and trying to swarm and register or inscribe like all of the like main accounts so that they don't get sat on, but BitGod was unfortunately already taken. I think I was like within the first 100. So
I know I've been sent a lot, right? I got like BitGod I think there's like orange block, right? Orange square, BitGod I don't know. I've gotten a bunch, as people were like, hey, I got this for you. A couple people are like, hey, I'm squatting this, send me 3 Bitcoin. Like, I don't know. Right. I don't know. I don't even know when I'm going to change my name. I want to make sure that like trying to stay as consistent as possible. And so any little change, I think, sort of pushes or potentially sort of pushes any extra growth that might come. So I don't know. I think it's definitely something that we're watching. I don't know if we do or do not do something on that side.
Yeah, when you become too generalized, bring in too many different ideas, right? It kind of dilutes the power and the strength. You say community power, but your community, and as we've kind of wrapped this up, coming towards the end, you've scaled over 100,000 followers in a month. What would you say about your community is special? Is this something that is this the type of community that just wants you to pump things? Are they trying to interact with you behind the scenes? Do they seem interested in things outside of just speculative value? Give us a description as the guy who's kind of leading this massive movement for this project about their community.
I think it's really focused, I think, around, again, like the sort of core mission, which is really educating, entertaining, and sort of onboarding. That's sort of the three things there. And so I think to that sort of point, we've shown that in action in the past, right? One is sort of the threads that, I was putting out over the past 2 to 3 weeks, explaining a lot of different things that, of course, is like just not Googleable, right? Like you can't Google how to really mint a Unisat until now, right? There's about like 40 million different threaders now that are doing all of this stuff. Probably just ChatGPT that regurgitated, again, like I was saying on that space. But I think that's sort of one thing. Second is I think being on those spaces as much as possible, right? Like showing my face, as well as trying to be a help as much as possible to people in the DMs, as I think been one of my goals. And then just starting today, I put out a tweet, my most recent tweet on I've been having a lot of, outside of the general operational calls, like just having a lot of calls with some of these different sort of whales, with some different groups, one-on-one calls with different people that I either want to help, get sort of deeper in this ecosystem, et cetera, et cetera. That's something I want to do at least over like the next week or so. And I don't know how much longer than that, but like at least over the next week, many of the people we gave whitelist to, et cetera. So I have one set up tonight with Citadel, right? I know they do a bunch of different, alpha stuff and just stuff with the Zukis and the beans, et cetera. So that's one. Second, I think, is X Plus tomorrow, right? X Plus from BitGods. And then, got like Trevor right now, he's messaging me about doing ninja alerts. So like, that's something I really want to do, right? Is like answering questions, of course, about Redacted, but hey, like, what do you think about just getting into the Bitcoin ecosystem? And I'm happy to sort of give my thoughts there. So that's, I think, something that we're really focused on, myself, and I think as a team is, trying to sort of pay respects, I think, to many of the OGs of the Bitcoin side, on the Ordinal side, as well as, continuing to push that sort of mission and drive that mission home as much as possible.
Right now, crypto is in such a weird space. You have, and I put this tweet out actually today. I said we had simultaneously 2 meme coin seasons happening on the two biggest chains, but they've had quite different outcomes, it appears. With Bitcoin meme coin season, which is what BRC20s were kind of originally perceived as, right? And most of them were just meme coins to begin with, has kind of led to this rapid acceleration of Bitcoin innovation. And now you're seeing things like OrdFi and attempts at launch pads, right? And new builders in the space. You go look at Ethereum meme coin season, and now it's just turned into people sending money to random wallets, hoping that they create a token, right? To pump. Right. So it's like, what happens here? Do you think that there's a point where there's like a mass migration to Bitcoin, and if yes or no, how do we onboard the next million people into, or even a million people into the Ordinal ecosystem over the summer, so that we can have this Ordinal summer that everyone keeps promoting on Twitter?
This is such a difficult question, because I think that like it is just a sad state of affairs to say and look at like what the hell is going on, like on the east side, where people are just sending money to random addresses, with almost nothing, sort of expecting, I guess, really nothing in return. Just weird. I saw like ETH, I guess, what's his name, Ben, yesterday, or not even Ben, I guess like Borovic, right? Sort of getting, I guess, donations. It's just like interesting. I don't know what happens there, but I don't know if that's really a good route in general. I think that like all of that stuff that's happening, though, is like not something that we should really be worrying about, I think, as a team, as ourselves. I think obviously like never want to support rugs and stuff like that, but like I think that we just need to focus on as a team, and I think as what we push is like, if we're just going to try and make it as simple as possible, we have good intentions. We want to make sure that at the end of the day, the Bitcoin ecosystem is continuing to grow into a larger pie. We're supporting builders as best we can. That's all we can do, right? That's sort of, I think, the best that we can do as a potential company, as just people in the ecosystem. And unfortunately, like the rest of the stuff, right? There will be rugs. There will be rugs on Bitcoin if there hasn't already, right? There will be, and both NFT projects as well as probably BRC20 ICOs this summer, right? And DeFi and all of this sort of stuff that is just, it's really unfortunate and gives, of course, this space in general a bad stain. And so that's something I think that is obviously on our minds. We try not to focus on it as much as possible, but to make sure that we're staying true to our mission and like just pushing that forward, because I think that's just what we can do best. Like there's just going to be scams in any industry. But is it ultimately, Disney's fault that someone steals IP? No, I think that like they try their best to protect against that stuff. And unfortunately bad actors are everywhere, and maybe a little bit more so on the crypto side, but that's, I think, the best that we can do.
Yeah. Education and infrastructure is probably the two biggest hurdles to overcome.
Yeah.
It does feel though that the tides are turning a little bit, as I do see a handful of the Solana leaders start talking about moving over to BRC20s. You're starting to see some of the ETH people either resent it and call it stupid, or just, kind of say, hey, I'm interested. And you're also starting to see some of the Bitcoin traditionalists, or even some of the naysayers like Peter Schiff just kind of move over and say, hey, I was wrong and I kind of like what's going on here and I'm going to participate. It's probably going to take a little bit longer than we think. It takes probably a month or so, if I had to speculate, to figure out, to kind of like really understand what's happening on Bitcoin and learning the new consensus mechanism and all that. So it is going to take some time. It is unfortunate though in this space, right? Everyone has kind of like a short attention span. Where they just DM you and they're just like, please pump this token. Dear God, I'm so underwater on whatever it may be. How far ahead has the Redacted team thought about the project? Is it something that you just kind of have to take day by day? Are you like the meme or like I forget what movie it is, the Office meme, where you just have like a poster board with all kinds, like trying to connect the dots years ahead? What is the strategy moving forward? I guess you could say from the time that this pod releases over the next few days.
Yeah, I think the strategy is definitely probably being planned out right now, about like 3 months to sort of like 6 months. And that's sort of more so of like, again, the general vision type stuff. Because I think, again, like you can't necessarily say like, all right, we have to go to market with X in 6 months, because who knows, of course, where I think the market is, who knows where the sort of sentiment around what that potential type of product would be, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that where we're focused right now is over these, I think, really next 3 to 6 weeks at least, but are having the vision for, I think, max of like 6 months for now. And I think that's pretty safe. And I think that like we have to try and have some sort of timeline, because I think just sort of like shooting from the hip too much can of course lead to like just a lack in understanding of like what actually is going on. We look in sort of disarray. And so that's, I think, really the focus right now is at least over the next 3 to 6 weeks, but having, a longer term vision into those like 6 months or so where we would potentially like to go.
I think that's the proper answer. That's the same that vision that we have at Emblem Vault. Things just change so rapidly that sometimes you really can't even look past it. For example, at Emblem, we had this vision of, being cross-chain, NFT vision, and that's kind of the similar vision. Then Ordinals came and just kind of flipped everything up on its head, and you kind of just have to support this because you just like, it's the biggest opportunity probably, at least of the year, could be of your lifetime. And you'll never know unless you do pursue that. And if you stay too regimented over this like constructual plan that you have of a blueprint, it just does not work in this space, especially with like how volatile it is based off of the influence that happens on Twitter. You could be working on something and then 2 days later, no one wants to even touch it because of something outside of your control that populates it. As kind of like a final question, man, are you having fun doing this? I know you're probably stressed, but like, are you having fun, man? That's the final question that'll leave you on here, or leave on this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I think I've had some of the most fun I've ever had in my life. I think these past 3 weeks, I think what just excites me the most is the sort of work, that we put in, not only, over these past 3 weeks, but like previous to that, right. Myself and really Lynn, and building, meaningful relationships before we even had any plans, right, to do anything. And so it's very genuine, right? It's sort of from, all right, like, I want to be your friend. I want to connect. Like, let's generally chat in a group chat, over these past 2 months or so. And now it's like, all right, like, this is what we're doing. Like, would love for you guys to be a part of that. It's really been a nice support system, right, that I think we built organically through and through from everything. So I completely think that the rest of the team is having fun. I think that it's obviously been stressful, right, when you're sort of having to stay up multiple days to make sure, a couple little tweaks here and there make sense because of different time zones, from our team to Xverse to Luminex. It's definitely stressful, and it's definitely like, damn, like, this is really difficult. But I think that it's worth it, right? And I think that, like, what we're itching on here, and what we're scratching at the surface of is at the beginning of this summer, and just like going into longer term future, could just be something so special and magical. And I think that, like, that's what's so interesting about everything here is the pressure is high. It's definitely stressful. But I think that the opportunity to create something so magical like that, where you do get to onboard a lot of people, you do get to maybe define some culture, is really exciting. That's I think really what a lot of people want to do, and I think we're in one of the best positions to do that. And just continuing to push, continuing to work hard, and try and keep the team humble, regardless of any sort of success that we've had so far. So it's definitely been fun, but have to keep pushing.
Never lose track of not only the vision, but your own emotions that take place throughout the entire journey. It's something that you'll never forget, and you'll always remember, no matter what the outcome is. But you, sir, man, very self-aware person. Your experience shows, whether you participated in crypto throughout those entire years from 2015 to now, or it just immediately clicked. But there's something here. Whether it's the marketing, the vision, all of it together. And I'm excited to follow this journey along with you as an OXBT holder, as a friend, and I guess a follower and a fellow podcast, and as a guest too. So a lot of different things. Excited to, work together into the future whenever that does, if happens, wink, wink. And, I'm excited to follow you along. I think you said the next 3 to 6 weeks sounds like might be quite important moving forward.
Totally. I think so, right? It's going to be grueling. It's going to be a grind, but us as a team are up for it. And I think that the rest of the market is ready for it as well. Yeah,
I think they are. Well, guys, make sure you guys follow BitGod, Redacted, follow along the journey. It's going to be a very exciting one. And thank you guys for listening and watching. We'll catch you next time.